Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the First Person Podcast. This month we're having a very general discussion about Dragon Age as a series with two of our FPS editors, Betsy, Brey, and Elise, Vist. We discuss a whole variety of stuff in this hour, including what it is about Dragon Age that makes people obsessively play these games over and over, the difference between Dragon Age and Mass Effect, the in-game politics, histories, philosophies, and the focus on romance and sexuality within the universe. This podcast does contain spoilers, especially for Dragon Age 2, but it's mostly general discussion about the series. I hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, today we're here talking about Dragon Age with just two of our editors, which is an exciting and intimate podcast experience. I'm Emma Vossen, Editor-in-Chief of FPS, and my Twitter handle is Emma H. Vossen.
I'm Betsy Brey. I'm the Essays Editor here at FPS, and my Twitter handle is, predictably, at Betsy Brey.
I'm Elise Vist. I'm usually the person who is recording these podcasts, but I get to talk today. Very exciting. Rob has to sit here silently. And my Twitter handle is Visticuffs.
So, I've never played Dragon Age, but I sit next to you guys, and I work next to you guys, and so I feel like I've probably heard more about it than any other game that I've never played.
That's fair.
I regret nothing.
So, basically for my first question, just start it really mellow, is just, what do you think it is about Dragon Age specifically that creates this kind of experience where people not just love it, because people love lots of games, but like can't stop playing it? Because I feel like that is something unique specifically about people who are fans of Dragon Age versus a lot of other games that we're super into.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that it's more about BioWare than Dragon Age, because like I know people who play and replay Mass Effect in the same sort of obsessive way that I play and replay Dragon Age. And I've played Mass Effect like 2 or 3 times as well. I personally just like magic and fantasy as a world to explore in a game. Well, and you get to pick your own avatar in Dragon Age mostly, more than you do in Mass Effect. So I think it's the interactions with my party and feeling like I'm not just an agent in the world, but that people care about the actions that I do.
Because that is a huge difference. Like, I would say from listening to you guys, it sounds like the biggest difference between Dragon Age and Mass Effect is there's not this Shep focus. There's more customization to who you are as a person. Is that true?
I would agree with that. I haven't played Mass Effect for more than a couple of hours, which I know is one of the greatest cardinal sins of gaming. You all can chase me with pitchforks later if you want.
Oh, so good.
Thank you. You're the first person who's been understanding about that statement ever.
It's not like when Rob said he didn't watch Star Wars earlier.
That was a bloodbath. I can play my avatar in Dragon Age in a lot of different ways that significantly changes what it is that happens throughout the game, not just like an ending or a boilerplate at the ending or something like that, or the color of the light at an ending or something, like that. I'm not referencing anything specific.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's not just that different options are available to me, but that my relationship to the world changes. So like when I'm playing an Inquisitor in Dragon Age Inquisition, I might play an elf, I might play a mage, I might play a Kunari, which is like a giant horned beast monster that's awesome. All of those different races or classes or whatever change how I feel about the world of Dragon Age. I think that's why I replay it, because like playing Inquisition as a human rogue is a totally different game than playing Inquisition as like an elven mage.
Well, yeah, and like I feel like that's going to change your experience a lot as opposed to playing as a shepherd. Like one of the 3 backstories, in my experience, like how much does it really affect your playthrough? Yeah,
and while I like that Mass Effect, it doesn't really matter if you're playing femme shep or dude shep.
Sometimes I forget dude shep exists.
I was like, what do we even call dude shep?
I was like, dude shep. Oh yeah, right.
Shep, I guess. Like it doesn't really change how people interact with you.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Or like it doesn't really change how I feel about the game world, but I mean playing Inquisition as a different Inquisitor, or even playing like Dragon Age 2 where you can only play Marion Hawk or Garrett Hawk, playing as a mage versus playing as a warrior makes for totally different allegiances.
Well, on top of that, even with Garrett versus Marion, I've played a lot of 2. 2 is without a doubt my favorite game on the face of the planet, and I've always played as Garrett, and I, for the first time, took a stroll as Marion. I was just kind of appalled at how differently I was treated. Like, I was treated very different by almost everybody I talked to. The way that the dialogue is performed is different. The way that people react to me in that space is different. Complete with catcalling. I mean, it's very deliberately different. And that kind of feeling that it's not just this world is being created around me, I'm Shep, and more that the world is reacting to my presence, not it's being made for me, if that makes
No,
any
100%.
sense.
I think keep that thought in your mind, because that's something I really want to come back to. Just sort of this idea of, playing a female avatar, and whether sometimes it's like you're enjoying that it has no effect on your game, but other times it's like kind of weird that it has no effect on your game. And so that's something I want to come back to. For now, I want to go from that hyper general question to a hyper specific question, because you just mentioned, Dragon Age 2 being your favorite game in the whole world of all time, forever and ever, OTG.
It is my OTG.
Yep.
And I know that both of you love that game a lot. So one of the things I really want to know, especially as like an outsider who's like hearing few things about Dragon Age, why do people hate Dragon Age 2? And like more so than that, like why does it, because like I think more so than it's hated, it has a cultural reputation for being hated.
Yeah.
So like that's what I'm really curious about.
Yeah, and I think that is more true than saying most people hate it, because nowadays, like I think when it first came out, I was hearing people complain about it and like all that horrible stuff, but now I tend to hear it in the lines of like, everyone hates Dragon Age 2, but here's why I love it. I think it's mechanically a lazier game than Origins.
Yeah.
Like in terms of its design as a game. The maps are limited and repetitive. The combat is limited and repetitive. You don't have that like camp interaction, not as in campy, but like in a camp interaction with your party. A campsite in which you talk to your party. You don't have that ability to move around in the world, but narratively and artistically as a storytelling art form, I think Dragon Age 2 does so many different things that you just can't evaluate it on the basis of its maps.
So it's like more constricted, more controlled?
It's the story of one man or woman, and basically they're just trying to survive and get by in this town and all the horrible things that are happening in the wake of Origin and what happens at the end of Origin. And it's just a very focused story about this one person, the people that they're closest to, and just trying to live here, you know?
Yeah,
it all takes place in one city. It all takes place with 6 people, maybe. And the way that it's told that makes me love it especially is the narrated element of it. It's very framed in its narration. The game starts with a character being interrogated by another character. And the game you play is Varric, the character being interrogated. It's his recollections of Garrett or Marion Hawke and how they became this figure that they allude to in the beginning. They just say the champion of Kirkwall. And the whole story is then narrated by Varric. And at times that narration is unreliable.
Yeah, and I mean, you could certainly excuse things like repetitive combat and repetitive maps by that if you really cared about defending that. And like, I mean, Varric is telling the story, and what Varric cares about isn't what the dungeon looked like.
Yeah.
It's what you encountered in the dungeon, it's the decisions you made there. And one of my favorite things about Dragon Age as a whole is how it interrogates the question of like, what is a story and what is history?
Yes.
What actually happened? There's a whole bunch of references throughout the 3 games that force you to recognize that the thing that actually happened doesn't matter as much as how people talk about what happened.
So, because, I mean, I'm not really a fan of, like, open world gaming, or, like, people will try to sell games on, like, there's just, like, infinite things to do, and, like, there's just, like, infinite places to discover and stuff, and, like, this doesn't have, like, a lot of appeal to me. So is that what people were missing? Like, they wanted that, like, the spaciousness, and then it was...
Well, I mean, the thing with Origins is that you are literally the hero of the world in Dragon Age Origins. You travel across Ferelden, which is the sort of English-y country, and you save the world by bringing all of these different countries together, and there's this massive scope. It takes place only over about 6 months, I think, and it really does have that sort of quintessential hero stuff. And then you go from that to Dragon Age 2, which is such a condensed story, and it's not about the fate of the world.
Because I'm having a moment here.
It's about one person.
Because, like, I just started writing that Majora's Mask commentary.
Yeah.
And what you just described is like, here's Ocarina of Time, this game that everyone loves. Here's this game that no one likes that I love way better, and here's why. And it sounds like everything you're listing, it's like almost the exact same reasons. It's like,
that's so cool.
It's not about saving the world, it's not about being the most important person, it's just about day-to-day interactions.
Well, I think it's funny, too, because you could argue that Garrett or Marion aren't the most important character into what happens at the end of 2 is what starts Dragon Age Inquisition, the end result of it, which, happens no matter what you do. Again, not about the choices you make, it's about how the world reacts to your presence. It's not going to change because of you. But people in Thedap, the world that Dragon Age takes place in, they remember the champion of Kirkwall, Garrett or Marion, and also that one person who does that one thing.
Poor Betsy. I'm gonna take over narration of this, because this is Betsy's favorite character.
You're killing me here.
Anders is a mage that you pick up very early on in the game, and he is like very much pro mage rights and like anti-Templar oppression,
right.
And very much like a freedom fighter. And you discover there's all these other horrible things that happen. But at the end, he is a terrorist. He performs an act of terrorism by blowing up the Chantry, which is a church.
He blows up a church.
He blows up the church and kills the Grand Cleric, who's like the Pope, I guess.
Yeah.
Sort of.
He does it bad. He does it very bad.
So you're like hyper super betrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you might not be, to be honest.
Right.
You are and you aren't.
Yeah.
I've played before where I'm like, yeah, Anders, let's go blow up the Chantry. But you can't control part of the reaction.
Yeah.
So you can be like, let me help you do this thing that you're not telling me about, but I know what you're doing here. And he's like, no, I don't want you implicated in this. And also, I'm totally not doing anything wrong.
So wait, is this the end of Dragon Age 2?
Yeah. Well, so he blows up the Chantry, and then you have like sort of one last big combat thing that takes place.
Right.
But essentially, that's the end of Dragon Age 2.
Because like am I wrong in like, is that like why a lot of people don't like it had something to do with the ending, or like beefs about the ending?
It's not that people object to the ending so much as how people feel about that particular character.
Right.
He's, understandably talked about in a very negative light a lot. And when you start Inquisition, they talk about him understanding fully that he started this huge civil war across multiple countries and basically destroyed their entire religion across, again, multiple countries. And we mentioned the Mages and the Templars, but we didn't really explain the division there or what even it means in this world to be a mage, which is the problem part, I suppose.
Yeah.
When I think about the ending of 2 and what people their reactions to it, some people are very angry that you can't help him dismantle this system that is very, very harmful to a lot of people on the basis of the way they were born. And on the other hand, it is a bad thing. Blowing up a building is bad.
Yeah, innocents are murdered. And you can't stop him from doing it. You can't temper.
So you can either just support him or
support him without, in the narrative of the game, without knowing what he's going to do. He never tells you what he's going to do. So the only way you know what he's going to do is if you've played the game before. It has a lot of similarities to the ending of Mass Effect 3 to some extent.
Yes.
In that you literally do not control what happens.
Yeah.
No matter what decisions you made, if you supported the Mages, if you supported the Templars, whatever, it's still going to blow up.
Yep. It doesn't matter who you are or what you did. This thing happens.
It doesn't matter how much Anders loves you, because
you can date him.
More tragic.
Oh God! Like that was the worst decision I ever made. I think it's really interesting though that like when we talk about the ending of Dragon Age 2 compared to the ending of Mass Effect 3, where there was a huge deal about it, I almost think that's because of the Shep-centered universe versus the world happens around you and you're just in it, which you have in DA2. Like if you've been Shep the whole time and you feel like you have this this control over everything, then why shouldn't you be able to change what happens?
Yeah.
But everything just happens to poor Garrett.
That's true.
So
Hawk doesn't choose any of this.
No.
I feel like, talking about the ending of 2 kind of segues into my next question, which is basically I just want you guys to talk about how in-game religion factors into the Dragon Age experience. And can you think of another game in which you actually really care about the philosophies and the social structures and the religion?
I think, like, I don't really have an answer to that because it's literally just I can't think of any others because Dragon Age is the only game I really play. And maybe that's because it's the only game where that happens.
With
it's
those
true. Like,
intricacies.
I know the hierarchy of the chantry and I understand the interactions between, you know, the circle, and which is where all the mages are kept, and the chantry and the Templars and the Seekers, and like this incredibly complex socio-political world. And you can play the game without caring about that kind of thing, but I think the game does a really good job of teaching you that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like when I think about that sort of stuff, like that sort of lore stuff in games, like my brain always goes to WoW. And like the thing about WoW is like all this religion and politics and everything is happening around you, but like 99% of people just open a quest box, click accept, don't read anything.
Yeah.
And like it's just so easy to just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just sometimes some people care, but like I think most people don't care. Whereas I think in Dragon Age it's like the game makes you care.
Yeah.
It absolutely engulfs you. You can't just click on the quest box. And I did play a lot of World of Warcraft, but it doesn't just. I said engulf. I'm going to keep thinking that because it's really what it does. It just kind of swallows you in a way that I certainly wasn't expecting. I didn't, total confession here, I didn't play a single Dragon Age game until January of last year. I am only a year and a couple months into this. I know, that looked wrong.
I know.
So I played Inquisition first, and oh man, what a rabbit hole.
And now your life has totally changed.
Well, yeah.
I'm really curious because, like, I was so excited for Skyrim. And then it was so disappointing because I wanted it to be just open world Dragon Age.
Yeah.
And I've played a ton of Skyrim. I've probably played as much Dragon Age and Skyrim. I've played, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of Skyrim, and there is a complex socio-political system going on there. There are all those systems in place, but I felt very detached from all of them. I could just throw off and do whatever I wanted, and wherever I went, the world literally bows to you.
I think Skyrim's a lot more like WoW like that.
Yeah.
Those structures are there. People put a lot of effort into writing them and establishing them, but like the design isn't there to make you care.
Yeah.
No. Well, and my biggest complaint about Skyrim is that if I talk to a character, even one of my followers, I can say something and then I'm like, oh shoot, I wish I'd said that other dialogue instead. I'll just like walk away and come back and talk to them again.
Right.
And get to have the same conversation. But if I tell Fenris, if I make fun of Fenris for not being able to read, immediately there's the like minus 15. and that's it. I can't have that conversation again unless I can start from another save.
Don't scum it.
But it's immediately apparent to me that my words have meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they don't in Skyrim. So why should I learn anything about what's going to offend someone, how they might respond to something? I don't need to learn any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Really, because I can just be like, oh, you didn't like that? Okay. I'll say the right thing.
And I think in Skyrim, like, in an MMO, there's all these technical reasons why things you do and say can't really have an effect on the world, you kill all the poison bears and then the poison bears are still there because someone else has to kill them. But, like, in Skyrim, there isn't really those technical reasons for that, so I think our expectations of affecting the world are higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I say this as someone who's played, like I said, like 1,000 hours of Skyrim. It's too easy to affect a lot of change on the world. It literally all lands there for you. And I know part of the whole hero journey quest thing and the power trip that is Skyrim is about how kind of easily it comes to you. But I didn't feel it that way with Dragon Age, even with Inquisition, where you are literally marked for greatness on accident. So it's like you can have these sort of special powers thrust on you, but I don't know, it's harder to do anything with it in Inquisition.
You still have to convince people to join you, and you have to do things for them, and you have to make difficult choices, and
those choices actually impact things. Where in Skyrim, I have done, I've been very nice, I've been very terrible. I have killed everybody I found in an entire province. Like, I have not done that too. I have been very well behaved and nice and not kicked a single chicken. but it still felt like very much of the same game. I was interacting with it. Even, it doesn't matter if I turn the binary on or off on any of the NPCs there. It didn't really change anything for me, but I made one person mad in Inquisition, and I couldn't live with the decision to the point where I went back 20 hours of gameplay. So that way I would make him so mad at me that he left.
Yeah. So, do you think then that, bring it back to the religion, philosophy, culture thing. Do you think part of your compulsion to actually learn that stuff instead of yada yada past it is that you need to know it to not piss people off?
Yeah, 100%.
Real life.
Yeah, yeah. I need to know that so there's a character Vivianne in Dragon Age Inquisition. She's a circle mage who believes that the circle should exist. So she was raised in a circle, and she is in charge of a circle, and she doesn't think that they should be destroyed. And so I need to know why, I need to know what the circles do in order to be able to talk to her in a way where she'll continue to work with me. Mm-hmm. And she might not like the things I'm saying, but I need to know those things in order to have a conversation with her. Otherwise, the conversation I'm having with her is meaningless. Yeah. She asks at one point, what I believe should happen to the circles, and there are 5 options there. One of which is, I think, mages should be in the chantry. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know how connected but separate the chantry is from the circle, that's a meaningless sentence. Yeah. And you don't know why picking it would make her really happy.
Yep. And I mean,
yes,
if everything you just described isn't immersion, I literally just don't know what it is.
I mean, I feel through my avatar, I participate in the world of Thedap.
I will fight you on
this one. Wait. Thedap.
Thank you.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who doesn't.
No, it is definitely Thedap.
Thank you.
So I'm going to drop my favorite Dragon Age fact right now, because we said Thedap. Initially, they didn't have a name for the world, so they just called it the Dragon Age setting. And that gets really annoying to type out, so they started abbreviating it to the DAS. And then they were just well, that's its name now.
Oh my god, it is the DAS.
And so that's why you never come up with a temporary name for anything, because that will become its name.
That's amazing.
That's how you get Thedap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than
Nairn.
Nairn.
We just talked about the complicated social structure and religion and how it factors into it and politics and stuff like that. And then we're but they just called it the setting. That's they just named it.
You can only put so much attention into any one thing, and the name of it doesn't have as much to do with it as how it works.
Do you think you guys know more about politics in Dragon Age than real life?
I have been listening to a lot of American politics podcasts lately.
Oh man. And I was going to say I couldn't tell you anything about Canadian politics.
That's understandable. You're not Canadian. I don't know what judges you.
I think part of the reason why I care so much about the world in Dragon Age is because I care so much about the world in my world, right? The things that make me passionate in real life are, how do people talk to each other? What are the systems of power that allow some people to do things and other people not? Those are things I care about all the time. And so it makes sense to me that I would find a game that really rewards that kind of interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love Dragon Age.
So,
the end.
So,
the DAS.
I'm going to completely switch gears here. Well, not completely, but I think everything you've said so far sets us up perfectly to talk about this now. Which is basically that I know that a huge part of why you guys care so much about Dragon Age and love Dragon Age so much is the romances. And I know a huge part of why you care about Dragon Age so much is the queer romances. Mm-hmm. And so basically, I just want you to kind of talk about what makes a good romance in Dragon Age and how queerness is incorporated into Dragon Age in a way that it's just not functioning in other games.
Don't know where to start.
Yeah, I was just to say.
I think so. My favorite romance in Dragon Age is a male mage hawk and Fenris,
who is
an elf who was a slave to an evil mage and hates mages. And I managed it with like a friendly. It was not a rivalry romance or rivalmance. It was so you can be rivals with someone, and that's if you do a lot of things that they disagree with, but you do it sort of with enough confidence that they're like, I don't like what you're doing, but at least you have an opinion.
Like a hate fuck scenario?
Yeah. It's
sort
like,
of,
I respect you, but I don't respect your decisions.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't like the things you're doing, but...
Because if you sort of waffle and you're like, I sometimes do things they like, sometimes do things they don't like, you don't get a friendship or a rivalry. You just sit in this indifference.
Yeah.
So you have to have a friendship or a rivalry in order to have a romance.
No one's ever going to fuck you if they feel indifferent about you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
That's the greatest lesson of life.
Yeah, I know. Lessons from Dragon Age. Nobody
Yeah.
sleeps with people they're indifferent towards.
Yeah.
So I think, like, what I love most about the Hawk Fenris romance is that you really have to try, and it's not just about, like, getting enough points. You have to know who your Hawk is. You have to know, like, what decisions that Hawk will make. You have to understand why Hawk is making those decisions, because you have to explain them to Fenris when he asks you about them.
Because he does.
Because he does, and you have to engage with Fenris's opinions and points of view, and it's not just about buying him enough presents until he loves you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
you have
more
to,
like a real relationship.
yeah, you have to treat him like a person, and his points are totally valid, as are yours if you're like a pro mage Hawk.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, he was a slave to an evil mage and was made to do horrible things without his consent.
Yeah.
That is an awful thing. But you also know that mages are imprisoned and turned into tranquil, which is essentially like everything that makes them a person with feelings and emotions and opinions gets taken away from them.
They're lobotomized.
Yeah, lobotomized if they don't follow the rules. Right?
Simply because they were born a particular way. That's the emphasis there. They
Yeah.
can't decide whether or not you want to be a mage. Like in something like Skyrim, you decide if you want to be, everybody has the potential to cast magic. You decide if you want to go to the school and, run around with your lightning bolts and whatnot. But, I mean, if you're born a mage in Thedas, you're screwed, basically.
Yeah, you're going to be taken away from your home, and if you choose not to, they'll kill you.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think, like, what makes that romance so appealing to me is that I really have to care, and I really have to want it. You don't accidentally romance Fenris.
No. No, that one's hard, and I've messed up and ended up with somebody else because I messed up so much.
Yeah.
You have to very deliberately go about with that, and you have to be very conscientious of his ideas and his feelings and his ideologies and what he's gone through and how that impacts what you do, and whether or not you bring him with sometimes, because you can only take 3 people with you at any given moment. If you make a choice and they're not there, they don't know about it.
Which is, I think, that is the biggest problem I have with 2, and that's something they fix in Inquisition.
Yeah.
So, like, even if you don't take someone in your party, they will hear about the decision you made.
And they'll hold it against you if they don't like it. So you don't get to skip out on having done something somebody really hates or really objects to.
You can't, game it.
No, you can't, yeah. So.
And, like, I think they had queer romance in Origins. Like, there were 2 characters who were bisexual. Liliana and Zevran.
Yep.
But there was no one who is gay. And in Dragon Age 2, everyone is bisexual. Or who is it who said everyone is... In Dragon Age 2, pretty much everyone in your main party who is romanceable regardless of whether you're playing Marion or Garrett Hawk.
They're Hawk sexual.
On the one hand, it's awesome because it doesn't matter what gender I am. It turns the gender of Hawk in relation to, like, romance and sexual orientation completely moot. Like, you can headcanon your Hawk to be any gender, essentially.
Yep.
And anyone you're in love with has the potential to be in love with you back, which is awesome, but not super realistic, and falls into the sort of, like, yeah, everyone is sexually available to you, which is not cool. Yeah. Although, I think my favorite part of 2 is that you can flirt with Aveline, and she doesn't flirt back with you. She ends up married to someone else if you do the quest.
Sick of your shit, Hawk.
Yeah.
Because there's got to be a fine line, because it's like, on the one hand, it's like you want a world where sexuality is depicted in a proper way, in which eusexuality sadly doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think there's a part of me that's just like, well, I want to go exist in a world where everyone is bisexual.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's got to be some sort. It's horrible, but there's got to be some sort of like wish fulfilling aspect to that, because all I can think is like, you know, it being such a strange thing in this world to be bi.
Yeah.
To just go to this world where suddenly
Everyone's.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, I think that's why hawksexual and eusexual are the right words to talk about, because outside of their romance with you, aside from Isabella, no one really talks about their sexual orientation.
Anders.
Right. You do know that he's been in a relationship with a man, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, although he'll bring it up if you're a man, and he won't bring it up if you're a woman.
He's like, does it bother you that I've been with a man? And you can say something to the effect of like, I wish I'd known sooner, eh? And he's just like, I've never understood why you wouldn't love somebody just because they're like you. And that's such a really cool moment. But if you're married in that same situation, the dialogue changes. He becomes very different. He's like, you just don't want to be anywhere near me. I'm a hot mess, basically, is what he says.
Right.
Yeah.
So
very
like,
different.
Like, Anders is legitimately depicted as bisexual, whereas a lot of the other characters would be depicted as
I think
bisexual.
Isabella is realistically depicted as like pan, and Anders, honestly, I think he should have been gay, but they made him available to both Marion and Garrett. Like, I think the backstory that they gave him and the way he interacts with a male hawk versus a female hawk, I've never romanced him as a woman because that
awkward.
Weirds me out.
It's awkward.
It just feels wrong.
It
right?
feels wrong. It is not right at all. But in Inquisition, there are gay characters and like bi characters and straight characters. And yeah, it sucks because I really want to romance Cassandra as a woman. I have like a massive crush on Cassandra, and she's straight.
Yep.
Like, hey, Sarah.
Yeah,
that sucks. This is such like, it's just like real life.
I know, it's like very much like it is. And I feel like that's kind of the happy medium we were talking about, wanting like this sort of indulgent world where, you know, a lot of people in Inquisition are bi. Between that and just the very kind of cut and dry that you have in Origins, I think that what they did in Inquisition with the romances is they just kind of blended that, where you do have straight characters, you have gay characters, you have a pansexual character, you have bisexual characters. Arguably, you have an asexual romance.
Well, and like in Origins, you can only flirt with people who will be receptive to your flirting.
Yeah.
Whereas in Inquisition, you can flirt with everybody,
but they might reject you.
They might reject you if you flirt with Cullen. As a woman or a man, he gets adorably flustered, but like he's not going to flirt back with a man, and he will eventually kiss you if you flirt with him enough if you're a woman. If you're an elven or a human woman, which is a really interesting part of Inquisition, whereas in Origins, like it didn't matter what race you were. In Inquisition, if I play as like a male Kunari, there are few options for me romance-wise. And on the one hand, that sucks. But on the other hand, I think it is interesting, especially as it relates to how the world works.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like without some rejection aspect, it's hard to get as immersed in those. Because, you want it, like, you want there to be some realism to it. Yeah.
Well, and I want it to be an actual decision or like an actual choice I'm making. And I want it to be a meaningful choice.
Well, because if you know it's just going to go well, like if the option comes up to flirt with someone and then you're just like, oh, this person likes me.
I'll keep spamming the heart dialogue option until they like me enough.
It's funny because I feel like it really truly is the difference between like making romance kind of like what it is in real life and making romance what us awkward nerds wish it was, which is just like, does an option come up to flirt with this person? It's gonna go well for me.
It'll be pithy too.
I just keep doing that until they love me.
I've said the wrong thing at the wrong time to many an Inquisition character and been really embarrassed. And the first time you meet almost any character in Inquisition, you have almost all of them, the main ones, you have the option to flirt. And, you know, sometimes you do that and they're like, what's wrong with you?
Like, we are in a war zone right now.
Like, what are you doing?
And, I mean, I think these decisions that they made to have characters be gay and straight in very, like, specific, meaningful story ways, that was what prompted the, like, BioWare doesn't care about straight white male gamers anymore. That was a person on a BioWare forum posted that because they were angry, and then David Gator came into the forum and was like, good. Which is
David Gator.
Yeah, I know.
Always saying the right thing at the right time.
And, you know, when it was first revealed that Cassandra, Vivianne, and Sarah would be romanceable, but that Cassandra would be straight, Vivianne would be straight. But at the time, I don't think we knew that. We just knew she was a party member. And Sarah is gay. And Josephine, but she wasn't announced as one of the characters. Like, this was when they were announcing who was around. And the response that I saw when I was reading stuff was like, how am I supposed to enjoy playing this game when the only character I want to fuck, the tiny elf girl, is gay? And the ones who are straight are butch and black. Essentially, that's what I read.
Jesus Christ.
That was literally the reaction.
Yeah.
Almost just like this game has like a puzzle you have to unlock to get to enjoy it, and that puzzle is have empathy.
Yeah.
Be a human. But like there is definitely a desire on behalf of those type of gamers for like just a straight up manic pixie dream girl type character. Is that the thing?
So
that was
the idea of like having an elf girl. I think that's a pretty strong fantasy trope.
Yeah.
That like the sheltered elf girl, you know, you can introduce her to the wonders of society or whatever. I don't really get it. It's creepy and paternalistic.
It's a virginity kink.
And Sarah is the absolute opposite of that.
Sarah will throw bees in your face.
Yeah.
Literally. I'm not kidding.
Okay, so going kind of back a bit and switching gears a little. Basically, we talked a lot about how in medieval settings and in fantasy settings, in games in general, but also across all media, there's a lot of issues depicting race and gender because there's this idea that they have to be, quote, historically accurate, and that historical accuracy means that women should act in a very specific way, and that white people who are not white do not exist, so they have no way they should act because they're not there at all. And this is a thing that just in gaming in general, and I think in nerd culture, we come up against a lot. So when you're looking specifically at Dragon Age, how have they sort of tackled this problem with depicting fantasy settings head on?
In all of the Dragon Ages, they've done a really good job of like gender parity in terms of like who's a ruler, who's a warrior, who's strong and powerful, who's wise and knowing. There's no real problem with that. They're not as good with depicting different human races. Even in Inquisition, which has the widest range of skin colors, although there are more people of color in Inquisition than 2 or Origins combined.
Yeah, I'd go with combined.
So I think they're trying, and I also think they do a good job of avoiding the fantasy races analog. Like, yes, elves experience a kind of racism.
A lot.
And mages experience an oppression based on how they were born. But it's not an obvious, like, oh, they're the black people of this world, which you tend to see when, like, fantasy racism happens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity that goes into it. And I think they aren't perfect at all. And their depiction of race in human terms is something that I think they still really struggle with, but they're trying, which is nice.
Well, and there seems to be
they're listening.
No bid to historical accuracy.
No.
Which I think is really, like, that's the first step.
They're like, this is a fantasy world, therefore we do what we want. It's a fiction. Like, you're under no obligation to go with realism in fiction. Like, why should you? That's the point of fiction. I would say, like, I especially have problems with their portrayal of race as we understand it in Inquisition in reference to Vivianne. Because she's Dorian is a person of color, and Vivianne, and I guess you could argue about Ball.
Yeah. And he's definitely coded.
He's coded other, but that's kind of what I'm getting at there. Is like you have that's what you have, and that's it.
Yeah, and the problem that I've had with Vivianne, and I think I've read articles where they talk about this, but I can't remember, that she is the first black woman in Dragon Age.
Yep.
And she is the mage who thinks that all mages should continue to exist under the circle and that they deserve the oppression they have because they're dangerous. She is the most conservative mage that you encounter.
In the entire series.
In the entire series. And while she has a point and she's an incredibly like politically savvy character and she is very good at sort of controlling what happens around her, she's still a black woman in a game that was made in our world that argues for the continued oppression of people based on how they were born. And that's a weird decision for them to have made.
It also bothers me that if she's the only black woman in the whole series, and the way that she speaks and approaches to other people, and I think one of the most common descriptions I've heard of her when people talk about what she acts like, they say she acts like a Disney villain, and that bothers me immensely. Like, it's almost a caricature, and it's... I wanted a little bit more depth out of her as a character, and it bothers me that it doesn't bother me that you can't romance her. It's just that romancing is often the option to actually get to know the characters better. So it'd be nice if you could build a friendship with her, or even just a better acquaintanceship, so to speak.
Yeah.
Other than what you do get with her, which is a very limited, I want to say the most limited quest, where she asks you to go get the heart of a snowdrake. Again, I'm not making this up, because it's not Disney princessy at all, but it still is a very shallow kind of storyline compared to what you get with any of the other characters, even the ones you can't romance. Like Cole is not a romanceable option, but you have more conversations with him. He has more conversations with other people. They develop him more.
She's such a closed off character.
Yeah.
I tend not to bring her with me, but all she does is like complain about other people in your party.
In one way, I'm happy to have a character in Dragon Age who you're not always going to get along with her, you're not always going to be on great terms with her. I just wish it wasn't the only black woman in the series.
The whole burden of representation of women of color is on Vivianne, and she's this
utter malcontent.
Yeah, she's really, she has reasons for all of the things that she believes, and as I've forced myself to interact with her, I see some ways in which I could like Vivianne, but I didn't fall in love with her immediately like I did with Dorian or Sarah, or even the people that you don't get to bring along in your party, like Josephine.
Yeah, and I mean, Dorian, I think, is one of the best video game characters I've ever encountered. He's spectacular, and, I don't always agree with him, but he's a good enough and well-written enough character that you come to figure out what he's doing, and you can have a significant impact in him overcoming these sorts of thoughts and ideas and ideologies he's been raised with. And he's the only other person of color.
So I guess the other half of that question for me was just, is there gendered oppression in the universe, and is it reliant on gender duality?
We're all thinking very hard.
Yeah, I think the whole point of Ferelden is that no one gives a shit about that kind of thing. There are instances where people are oppressed because of their gender expression or their sexual orientation, but those instances exist outside of Ferelden, which is the country that you play in and dominates the world. Like, there's Krem, who is trans, and Krem leaves to Winter, which is the place where they have evil mages and slavery. Like, it's the bad place.
That's the bad place.
And that is the place where Dorian's father tried to make him not gay by casting magic on him, and where Krem was kicked out.
It was either, we're gonna beat you up to the point you die, or you leave.
There is still those kinds of, feudal patriarchy things on the edges where some women have had to make choices, like marry someone they don't like. And Isabella is a really interesting story because she gets called whore a lot
constantly,
by everyone. There is prostitution that is like they're doing this because they're poor, not because they want to. And so it does exist, and I think that is a holdover from our what else would a woman who is poor do in the medieval ages? And I don't see men being put in the same situation.
Well, and you mentioned before people talking to you differently when you played Marianne.
Yeah, I didn't encounter that in Inquisition at all. But I think that's because you can be so many different Inquisitors that they couldn't possibly have the space for that in the game. When you're Marianne or you're Garrett, I mean, you can be sarcastic, or you can be a blood mage or a spirit healer, or you can be very diplomatic, but it doesn't really change too much about you. People encounter you the same way. There's so many different options with who you can be as an Inquisitor that I don't think they could have done that same thing. And I've played maybe 600 hours of Inquisition, I think, and don't look at me like that, Rob. I don't remember an instance where I felt treated differently because I was female or male. There are many cases where I was treated differently because I was a mage or because I was an elf or because playing as a Kunari right now is really fascinating. Playing as a Kunari, I'm much taller than everybody else in the game. And playing as a dwarf, I was much shorter. But they didn't change the camera angle, so in a lot of the cutscenes, you just get like the top of my little head if I'm a dwarf, or like I'm like a head and shoulders over everybody else, and it's just like my collarbones.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah,
That's
so, I mean,
weird.
it's
That's
very
so weird.
but it's very literally like if that's not like standardization and expectations of you being a human or elf or picking to be those points of view. Literally those points of view.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what is.
That's crazy. I never knew that.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we've talked about the world reacts to you, not that the world is built for you, but that the world interacts with you in interesting ways, but there is still a kind of like the true Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Right? That's sort of like the
one that...
ideal, let's call it the ideal Inquisitor rather than the true Inquisitor, is an elven mage.
The story makes the most emotional impact and the most sense if you are, I would argue, a female elvish mage.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you romance
Solus, who,
Well, and I've heard people say the same thing, where there seems to be like a sort of set expectation that you're going to play a white male ship. Do you think that's the same thing? Like,
I don't know, because I didn't play as an elven mage the first time I played Origins. Through playing all of the games, I learned that the most interesting figure would be an elven mage.
And you made your decision based on that.
Yeah, so like by the time I got to Inquisition, the first character I built was a female elven mage.
Right.
Ironically, I did the whole thing backwards. I had no idea about anything. I knew nothing about this world. I didn't know that elves or mages were persecuted, but the first character I booted up was a female elvish mage. And then my next character was a human male rogue. And I was like, oh, this is different. This is not as good. Like, I didn't think it was as good.
Yeah,
like,
when you just don't care as much.
No, it's like everybody's just going to give you a pass anyways. That's meh.
Lighting it up a bit. I'm just going to go for like the cheesiest question ever, which is, what would your dream Dragon Age game look like?
I have a hard time escaping what it is I think they're setting Dragon Age up for to be, because there's going to be another one.
Right. Yeah. I guess so. Think about it this way. If Dragon Age 4 was your ideal version of Dragon Age 4, what things would be, I don't want to say fixed, but like what things would be present?
I think it would look a lot like Inquisition.
They did a good job of balancing like open world with more closed focus, I guess.
I really liked the limited scope of 2. I would be able to interact a lot more closely with each map I went to, right? Like in Dragon Age 2, there's one map. And in Inquisition, there's like a whole bunch of different places you can visit, and you can kind of ignore them. So I think I would like a bit more consequence to those decisions that I make by like choosing not to close all of the demon rifts in this one country or this one sort of county. It doesn't matter.
In Inquisition, you play in Ferelden, the country that we've been talking about a lot, but you also play in Orlais, the country next door, which is France. There's no consequence to where I do and do not go, with the exception of the places, if you have to go to a place to continue the main storyline. But like, there's this massive civil war going on in the game, and I've gone to one of the biggest battle sites before I've completed negotiations to end that civil war, we'll say.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to call that quest line. I've been there before, I've been there after, and I've not gone there at all. And it feels like it should have a bigger impact, whether or not I go to that place. But it literally doesn't matter. I've left demon portals open all over the place.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
No one calls me out on it.
No, but they're not like, so about that portal right next to this settlement with all of these people, innocent refugees living here, you want to, I'm like, nope, I'm going to go pick flowers over here.
Yeah.
And there's no consequence to that. I liked the focused areas that you would have in 2. I'm not saying just 2 maps again necessarily, although I didn't have a problem with that. The 2 countries that varied so drastically, I don't know, at times it felt really cliched, like, oh, this is a deserty landscape. This is wooded landscape. Yeah, basically. Like, that got a little bit annoying.
That's such a problem with video games, full stop.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they heard the complaints about 2 and were like, okay, we will make the whole world interactable.
Yeah.
But they lost that sense that, like, your actions mattered to the land that you feel in Dragon Age 2, or at least that I felt. So I like that I can talk to my party whenever I feel like it in Inquisition. They don't always have something interesting to say, but I can go look at them whenever I want to.
You know where to find them.
Which is nice. I like that I can craft things. I like that I can pick flowers and mine ore. I like all of those kinds of elements of the open worldness of Inquisition.
Yeah.
I just want to feel the consequences of my global decisions more. If I really am shaping the future of Thedap, then it should matter.
Well, and in Inquisition, I felt that pretty distinctly, because you literally are saving the world again. They throw you back in the old save the world trope, which is fine, you know, but that's how much we've
Guys,
had
I've
of
saved
that.
the world so many times.
Exactly. Like,
You don't
that's-
even know.
Ideally, I think Dragon Age 4 should combine the kind of focused elements and impact that you have, and maybe not be a save the world kind of a thing. I am so sick of save the world stories.
Yeah.
I still play them because everybody does, and I can't help it because I'm a person of everybody. But it's you know, I like
gets
to.
old.
I like to because it stepped away from that.
Yeah, it really is just like survive while the world is falling apart.
Yeah.
Just be a person that you like while this is happening. And I think that's not a lot of games offer me that opportunity to like, you know, I can be a person that I hate in Dragon Age 2, and that is a painful thing.
We desperately want to do a stream for FPS where we make every bad decision we possibly can and get everyone to hate us.
Oh
And then-
god, that sounds awesome.
Which is harder than just always picking the worst option.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. But just like do the thing that will make everyone yell at you. That sounds wicked.
Which is a balancing act of
Yeah.
jackassery. And,
Okay, so last question, because we're running out of time. Just essentially, what do you think other games that you've played can learn from Dragon Age and its focus on people and culture?
yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes.
That combat isn't the be-all and end-all of fantasy worlds.
Yeah.
That you can have really interesting and meaningful and like accomplishment heavy encounters that aren't about, you know, getting the right skills and min-maxing your abilities and all that kind of stuff. And that you can teach people that kind of thing without just dropping codexes on them all the time, which Dragon Age does do. They're constantly dropping codexes at you, but characters are having conversations around you, and you have to learn from those conversations. So I think that would be a lesson that I would bring to other games, is that like you don't have to give me lore in a book.
Yeah.
You can have characters talk to me, ask me questions about things, and do that without me interacting with them first. I think that is the biggest lesson, is that it really does feel from 2 onwards that my party has a life outside of me. And that life has impacted how they will respond to me.
Yep. I 100% agree with all of the above. Like, one of my favorite quests in Inquisition, there's some fighting in it because there's, you know, it's a video game with fighting in it, so there's some fighting in this particular quest, but it's a court intrigue quest. You spend all your time running around, gathering up rumors, and, like, talking to people, and trying to be in the right place at the right time, and say the right things to the right people. And it's hard, and it's
That's my
fun,
jam.
and it's
That's
fun.
my jam right
It's
there.
spectacular, and occasionally you have to sneak off in the garden and go fight somebody, you know, but you have to come back at the right time, put your proper clothes back on, and go dance with the Countess, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
And if you spend too much time away, people notice.
oh, and they start talking crap about you, and if you mess up too much, you lose the game, because you have to be a respected figure in this game, because you're on the world stage. I really like that about it, that it made me very aware about how they were reacting to me and not just how I reacted to them, and a lot of games are more about that.
You know what? You guys have like sold me more on playing Dragon Age in this podcast than I ever thought possible. Because I think like my reaction has always just been like, sounds awesome, but just like fantasy setting, meh.
Yeah.
Whereas like having these conversations, I'm just like, I don't even care about any of that. I just want to go home and like.
Oh no, there was a thing I wanted to say and then we never got to it. But
What was it?
when I first started playing Dragon Age, I didn't identify as queer. I didn't know I was queer. And I feel like Dragon Age had a part in that. That like that moment of realizing that I could flirt with Liliana and that was available to me. That was an option. And then in 2, with Isabella being just so absolutely in love with the idea of having sex with people regardless of their gender, was a moment of like, oh.
It is a very sex positive series, honestly.
Yes.
They're like, do what and who you want.
I feel like we could probably record sometime an entire podcast just talking about how, like, video games essentially helped me figure out who I wanted to have sex with. Because I seriously think it was a huge thing for me. Like, and even, like, going back, like, thinking back, being like, oh, you know, it didn't bother me that I had to, you know, save Princess Zelda because I did want her to be my girlfriend, you know? And, like, I think that there's just a lot to be said about what games offer you for thinking about sexuality in a way that, you know, TV movies, it helps.
Yeah.
But it's just not the same.
No, it's not the same. Like that, I remember the thrill of, like, flirting with Isabella because you meet her in Origins, or, like, flirting with Liliana, and imagining that as, like, I explained it to myself as at the time as a kind of like, oh, well, they're just really cool ladies, and isn't that awesome? Which is such a, like... like, oh, honey.
We're just great gal pals.
Yeah. But I can see now that it was like I was allowing myself to flirt with a woman, and that was cool.
Yeah, and I've heard the same ththings about Fallout, and, you know, like, I think it's an experience a lot of people have had that is not talked about enough, so, yeah, maybe that's what we should come back to.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Thank you for listening to the First Person Podcast. We would like to thank Neil Randall and the staff of the Games Institute for their support, as well as Elise Vist, our podcast producer. We would also like to thank Stephen Trothan, who wrote and composed our theme music. I hope you enjoyed this month's podcast. You can tune in next month to hear us talk about the critical darling Undertale.